美国时事通，我是罗文。今天是2026年8月11号星期二。那昨天川普总统和卫生部长小肯尼迪发布了一个非常大的一个消息就是对于疫苗的一个制度的行政令，就是说把以前强制小朋友打的18种疫苗改到11种，而且是分时间打的这个麻腮方本来是一针剂的，现在还没有分开的剂量，在新的行政令中他们是可以分开打的，说他们在督促下边的药厂去制造分量的剂。那很多人就提出来分量到底好不好，可不可以一次打完它，所以这个也是有待讨论的一个问题。
The MMR, which hopefully will be split up together, there could be a possibility they're quite lethal.
We identified hundreds of infants and toddlers that died after these shots, often from SIDS, sudden infant death syndrome, cardiac arrests, seizures, encephalitis. It's killing some of these children. 25% of these deaths were classified as sudden infant death syndrome. And so these shots are killing the babies in their sleep. It's absolutely disturbing. And most of these kids, they died within about 2 weeks. So a majority died within 2 weeks after the shot. 40% died within 1 week. So the temporality there checks out. And most of these deaths occurred ages 1 to 1.5, right when they get the MMR shots usually. We did find the MMR and MMRV vaccines have been linked to 2,600% more deaths than measles infection since 1995. You can't make this stuff up. So for the past 30 years, the MMR shots have been killing more children, far more children than measles has.
但不管怎么说，这是迈出的第一步保护儿童。小肯尼迪也说了，说我们国家现在自闭症的发病率这么的高。1970年的时候，我们的自闭症是1万个里头才有一个。现在全国31个孩子中就有一个，然后加州19个孩子中就有一个自闭症，其中12.5个男孩中就有一个，男孩似乎发病率更高所以小肯尼迪说我们一定要公开透明，信息公开透明
President said, which is the source of his concern about this issue. And I'll just give an example. In 1970, the biggest epidemiological study at that time in history was performed. And the university scientists from across this country looked at all the 8-year-olds in Wisconsin, about 900,000 children. And they were looking for autism, and they knew what autism looked like. And they came back with an incident rate of 0.8 per 10,000. So less than 1 in 10,000. The rate, according to CDC today in this country, is 1 in every 31 children. In California, it's 1 in every 19 children, 1 in every 12.5 boys. Oh, there has been a dramatic increase. One of the things that the industry likes to say, one of the talking points, which the press loves to parrot, is, oh, we're just noticing it more. But this is an absurdity, and this is an assertion that has been debunked again and again and again by peer-reviewed literature. But it's also debunked by common sense. Because if we were just noticing it more, we would notice it in older groups. But we're not. We're only noticing it in kids who were born around 1989 or after. The older generations, you're not seeing those increases. So something happened in the mid-90s that changed our children, and it has to be an environmental exposure. Because genes don't cause epidemics. They can provide a vulnerability, but you need an environmental toxin. And what the president has charged us with is finding which one of those exposures or which collection of exposures are causing this epidemic. For decades, I fought for a simple principle. When it comes to the health of our children, government has an obligation to follow the evidence wherever it leads. Tell the American people the truth and give parents the information they need to make informed decisions for their families. Mr. President, you gave us a mandate to do just that. You directed HHS to examine America's childhood vaccine recommendations against the best available science and the practices of other developed nations. We did that work, and on January 5th, HHS and CDC overhauled the childhood immunization schedule, reducing the number of diseases universally recommended for vaccines from 17 to 11, and establishing distinct categories of recommendations based upon the scientific evidence. Our assessment found that the United States recommended more childhood vaccines than any other peer nation. President Trump mentioned the number that's 72 jabs before 18, but it actually could be up to 94 jabs. And nobody else has anything like that. And then many other countries, or most other countries, achieve high vaccination rates through education, informed consent, and public trust rather than mandates. Today, with this executive order, you are building on that work and acting on that evidence. We will preserve access to vaccines, strengthen safety monitoring, expand research, give doctors and parents better information, and restore informed consent and parental choice to their rightful place in American medicine. At HHS, we're already moving across multiple agencies, FDA, CDC, NIH, ARPA-H, NTP, the National Toxicity Program, and other parts of the department. We have already launched unprecedented research effort examining vaccine safety and long-term health outcomes in American children. We are putting some of the largest health data sets in the country to work, including CDC's Vaccine Safety Data Link, FDA's BEST systems, and other major federal and private health data sources. We're pursuing dozens of studies and analyses. We are comparing health outcomes in vaccinated versus unvaccinated children. We're examining aluminum adjuvants, the timing of the hepatitis B vaccine, vaccines administered during pregnancy, and outcomes ranging from allergies to autoimmune disease to autism and other neurodevelopmental disorders. At NIH, the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases and the National Institute of Environmental Health Sciences are working with the National Toxicity Program on a comprehensive review of vaccine adjuvants, ingredients that are added to vaccines to amplify the body's immune response. They will determine what the existing science establishes and where uncertainty remains and where we need additional research. We're bringing that same determination to autism. NIH has launched the Autism Data Science Initiative with 13 research awards examining autism prevalence, causes, treatments, and services. 5 of these will include vaccines among the potential factors that they examine. Dr. Bhattacharya will discuss that work in greater detail. Next month, ARPA-H is preparing a major new initiative focused on foundational causes and biology of autism and on better diagnostics, treatments, technologies, and tools for people with autism and their families. We will examine every biologically plausible hypothesis and leave no legitimate scientific question unexplored. Mr. President, you have told us that you want answers, so do I. We have just over 2 years to finish the work, and I know you're impatient, and we are moving with the urgency that deadline demands. We will bring you actions and findings as soon as they are ready. We will not wait for the 90-day period, and within 90 days, as you have directed, we will deliver the full response required by this executive order. Our task force on safer childhood vaccines was established by Congress in 1986, but went dormant in 1998. Last year, after nearly 3 decades, this administration reinstated it as required by the statute, and yet it was discontinued. And you restored that congressional mandate. The task force is already working to expand vaccine options, examine the timing and sequencing of childhood vaccines, strengthen safety monitoring, advance research into alternative adjuvants, and continuously evaluate risks and benefits using American and international evidence. Taken together, this is what gold standard science means. No predetermined answers, no institutional taboos, no sacred cows, no hiding uncertainty. Test the hypothesis, examine the data, replicate the results, tell the public what we find, be honest. This is the standard you have set for this administration. It's this standard I intend to enforce at HHS, Mr. President. You asked us to get this done, and we are getting it done. And we will keep working with urgency until American parents can have confidence on the medical advice that their government gives them is worthy of their trust. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Bobby.
那当然，我觉得这个除了跟疫苗或者跟环境、跟各种状况相关，还有一个就是筛查。不是说筛查的更多了，医学家的解释就是说，我们筛查多了，所以病才多了，不是这样的。那他们标准也降低了哈。那我们可以看一下这个数据。1979年的时候，空腹血糖要到140%才被确诊为糖尿病。1997年这个指标降到127，然后糖尿病前期降到110，2003年降到100，所以你不是筛查多了，而是说它的标准降低了。同时，血压高也是这样的哈。之前1984年的标准是160和95，2017年就变成了130和80，就高压和低压哈。所以美国的成人就一下增长了30%多的这个高血压的病人。然后同时胆固醇也是这样哈，以前胆固醇2001年的时候胆固醇的指标为130，2004年的时候降到100，高风险为70，那就是说又有数百万人加入了服用他汀的行列。撰写2004年更新版的9个男性中有8个在销售他汀类药物的公司上班，如果你不被迫他们不会揭露此事。这就是为什么现在的病人会增多了。如果你把健康的标准无下限的下调的话，这也是另外一个药厂赚钱的方法。所以你的祖父在血压145、92的时候是健康的，而你在130、85的时候却是高血压。所以身体没有任何的状况，只是获利的人增多了哈，这是另外一个说明为什么现在病人越多的一个原因哈。所以医学界必须诚实的告诉人类到底怎么回事。其实高一点、低一点，或者什么在临界点，那还不是这些医生科学家们说了算，对不对？所以这就是他 tricky 的地方。更可怕的是，有医生揭露疫苗的成分居然含有蛇的基因，还有其他细菌的基因，说完全是增益功能的。那这样打到孩子身上，而且制药厂为了推广这些疫苗都是给医院奖金的，如果你们不推荐给孩子打的话，你们就没有奖金拿了。
Cells, and they used to use those stem cells in research and cosmetics, etc. They're not getting them anymore because of what the COVID shots did to the placentas and those infants. That's not being talked about in the media. Nothing bad about the shots being talked about when we have Kevin McKernan and all these people looking at it going, there's SV40 in it, there was a staphylococcal endotoxin gene, there were 2 snake genes in there, you know, it's a definite gain of function. Nope. We got to put it on the vaccine, the baby vaccine schedule, because any doubts, whether or not well-funded, about the vaccination must not be allowed to exist. That's why.
That sounds like a religion.
And it's been
It
going
sounds like a cult. It sounds like a crazy cult that the whole world's been sucked into. Giving a COVID shot to a baby today is insane.
3 of them. They get 3 by the certain. You'd have to look up the schedule, but I believe it starts at 6 months, and they get 3 of them, kind of boom, boom,
Are
boom.
doctors really recommending this?
It's on the look. There's a group of people called ACIP. They're doctors, usually with vaccine interests in their bank accounts, that make the recommendations for the vaccines, and they've recommended that 6-month-olds. So if your doctor is following the ACIP program, you have to be offered that vaccine. And now that doctor, this is another part of the story, is that doctor's likely to lose $250,000 a year if they don't do that, because there's incentive given to hospitals and doctors, which is what naively I was on the other end of when I woke up in 2008 and said, wait a minute, why are we doing this stuff to my sick, inflamed patients? You're giving more inflammation. It's because the hospital would lose something like $40,000 if they didn't give a vaccine within the first 24 hours of admission.
Oh my God.
And they would get $40,000 if it was all a money game. That's really the bottom line of it. And I didn't know that until a nurse years ago, who was a high-level administration. She said, Suzanne, this is why they did that to you. Oh wow, okay. Well, at least it makes sense now.
Nobody wants to think of it as a business. Nobody wants to think you're making business decisions at the expense of someone's health, and possibly whether or not they make it. Like, what are you doing?
Well, that's been the case since, basically the medical profession was infiltrated in the early 1900s by high-level interests that didn't want us thinking for ourselves and carrying on with the natural cures that actually work, carrying on with normal midwifery.
那小肯尼迪也表示说，他们也修改了食品卫生方面的一些规定哈。他说，我们有一个 GRAS， 就是通常被认为是安全的这个标准哈。这个是 FDA 发布规范食品产业的，但是这中间有很多人为的或者不知道怎么样的漏洞，结果被大的食品厂发现，就利用这个漏洞塞了很多的让身体受损的这些chemical 化学物品进来。他说无数的这个政府都让他们逃脱了，他说我不会干哈，我们要站在公共卫生这一边而不是在大食品厂这一边。他的说话引起了热烈的长时间的掌声，他说这个应该是几十年前就应该做的事情。
Over time, that narrow exemption became a massive loophole. The companies could make their own GRAS determinations and put substances into the food supply without even notifying the FDA. That's why the FDA staff could not tell me how many ingredients are in our food. Industry hijacked the loophole and drove a convoy of chemical trucks through it straight into the American food supply. The FDA was left with a major blind spot, and administration after administration allowed that system to persist, and Congress has not fixed it either. But this administration has repeatedly demonstrated that it will confront entrenched interests when they stand in the way of public health. And that's why President Trump today are taking action that should have been taken decades ago to fix this broken system and to close the GRAS loophole once and for all.
那当然谈到不诚实的话， Dr. Fauci 是最不诚实的人。那最近参议院揭露出他的短讯哈，最令人侧目的一点就是他自己在给其他官员的短信中提到说，他看到很多孕妇在打了疫苗之后有反应哈，他说这个可能有这抗炎因子风暴和发烧，他说这可能造成很多孕期第一期的流产。
Let me read one of these text messages relating to possible miscarriages. January 25th, 2021. Dr. Fauci, I asked around a bit more, and another issue came up that you need to be aware of. Since many people have these significant cytokine storms and fever after a second dose, this theoretically could be associated with miscarriage in the first trimester. CDC director, definitely a good point, especially after dose 2. Publicly, he was saying something different, and that is where the senators are pointing right now in their first release of these text messages.
You know, Dr. Fauci really fancied himself as the ideal public servant, that he was the voice of science, but I think what we're learning is he was a real miscarriage of justice. I just don't understand how, at a time as sensitive and raw as COVID was for the American people, he couldn't have publicly said, we don't know all the facts, we have a lot of doubts. This is not a requirement for everybody because of the doubts we have. He also delivered a miscarriage of justice by taking the fifth at the hearing last week. These are legitimate questions. Maybe his answers are good answers. Maybe that was such an outlier. Maybe he dismissed it on the basis of science. He could have explained that at the hearing. Instead, we're left with evidence that casts a real doubt on so many of the things he said. And we already know he told us that he made up the 6-foot rule. There was no scientific basis for that when we were told to be 6 feet apart. He already publicly acknowledged there was no science to that. He should have answered the questions the Congress had.
但是他在这个短信之后，不管是第二天还是3个月之后，他一直在电视上说的是这个疫苗对孕妇是安全的。福奇虽然用拜登自动笔签发的特赦令逃脱了联邦罪行，但是我觉得各州仍然可以起诉他。你这样做是公然谋杀，不是谋杀的话，至少也对他们造成的是故意伤害罪哈，所以完全各州都可以有理由行动起来去起诉他。那要被起诉的除了包括他，还有 Walensky， 就是当时 CDC 的老板，所以希望新上任的这个司法部部长 Blanche 可以彻底追究他们的责任。OK， 这就是今天的播报，感谢您的收看，加油！